welcome back guys to the Asian one-to-one football coaching channel. We're recording another episode on the Premier League Appetiser show. If you haven't subscribed to the channel already, what are you waiting for? Literally guys, takes 1 second to do. Click that button now and you'll get notification come through to say every time there's a video being uploaded on the channel, whether it be tactics and analysis or coaching sessions, or whether it be what we're doing today on the Appetiser show. Click the button, you'll get a notification come through straight away guys. Also, once you watch the video, leave a like and leave a comment saying what you liked and what you thought about the video itself. So on today's episode, we're just going to have a little rundown on what happened in the European games after Project Restart and heading into the 2021 season, and what permutations and what consequences that had on other teams in the league. Then we'll have a look at the Premier League start. So obviously there's been a start date that's been announced and what teams are going to be playing. We'll have a look at the fixtures as well to see who are playing, who's got the nice sort of fixtures early on in the season, who's got a difficult start to the season. Then we'll have a look at some of the transfers in. We won't look at everything in total. We'll just look at sort of maybe the marquee signings, the most notable ones so far. Likewise, we'll look at the players out. That's players that have either been sold by Premier League clubs already, or they've decided to maybe retire, or maybe even decide to leave the Premier League and be signed for another club altogether. And then finally, we'll just go through any other news that could be interesting or worth sort of mentioning on the channel. So, without further ado, we'll crack on with the first part, which is the 1920 final standings and European games. So, just rewind back a little bit. So, we'll talk about the Champions League to start off first, guys. So, England had two teams representing in the Champions League after Project Restart, which was Manchester City and Chelsea. So, we'll talk about Chelsea first. They played their first leg already before Project Restart, before coronavirus hit the country and the globe. They lost their first leg 3-0 to Bayern Munich. So they had a massive difficulty a minimal chance of them actually getting through the game, going away from home and trying to turn around a 3-0 deficit. And you would have guessed it guys, they lost the second leg 4-1, so Chelsea went out 7-1 in the last 16, so that was to be expected. Maybe not necessarily the scoreline, but definitely for them to go out. So they're out, guys. So then we move on to Manchester City. Manchester City had their second leg at the Etihad. They beat Real Madrid in the first leg 2-1, or 1-2 should I say. So they had a nice sort of lead going into the second leg. And then on the day they they continued their advantage, if you like, and they dispatched Real Madrid. I believe it was 2-1 to Manchester City in the second leg as well. So they've gone through to the last 8, if you like, of the Champions League. Okay, so Manchester City now went on to play Lyon. So Lyon, who knocked out Juventus in the round before, which was a bit of a surprise. Certainly to most people, I would have thought. Maybe not necessarily to Lyon themselves and their fans. And actually, surprisingly, at this point, Manchester City were probably favourites, if not at least minimum joint favourites for Bayern Munich to win the Champions League. And surprisingly, Manchester City lost 3-1 to Lyon, which was a massive scalp for Lyon, really, to beat the favourites, and you could argue maybe the informed team as well going into the competition. So Manchester City out, Chelsea out. That is the Champions League done. Incidentally, the final took place yesterday between PSG and Bayern Munich, and Bayern Munich won the game 1-0. Coman scoring the only goal. So congrats to Bayern Munich. It's the 6th time they've won the Champions League. I don't think you could argue with them. Well, if you win the Champions League, you win the Champions League. You absolutely deserve it. There's no fluke in it. And I believe they were the first team and the only team to win every single game in the Champions League. That's some achievement. Granted, there was 2 less games because of what's happened with COVID. So they won 11 out of 11, which is fantastic. To beat the calibre of opposition. Just to mention a few they played. Like I said, PSG in the final. They played Barcelona. They played Lyon. They've played Chelsea, they've played Spurs, they've played a lot of good teams in the Champions League, and they've won every single game, home and away. So congrats to them. Moving on to Europa League. So Manchester United and Wolves were the two teams in the Europa League that were left to play. United had a 5-0 win from the first leg away from them against Lask. They won the second leg 2-1, so they went through 7-1 on aggregate. And Wolves, they won their game as well, so they went through to the last 16 as well. Last 16? Yes, last 8 I think it was actually. So then we'll talk about Wolves. Wolves actually then when played Seville in the quarter-finals in the last 8, and sort of 3 or 4 minutes to go, Wolves conceded a goal, lost the game 1-0. Really, really disappointing for Wolves. Not to say that Seville were a bad team, because they've actually got massive pedigree, and in recent history they've done really, really well in this competition. So it was a difficult game, difficult result. I think it was just more so the manner and the timing of the goal that was more disappointing for Wolves fans. So they went out, and so Seville moved into the semi-finals. Man United won their last quarter-final game against Copenhagen in extra time. Bruno Fernandes scoring the goal, so that moved them to the semi-final against Seville. On paper, United were the favourites, but it's no pushover. Seville, like I said, have got massive pedigree, massive history. I believe they've won the competition 6 times, the most out of any club in the competition's history. So it was never going to be an easy game, and it turned out to be that as well. So United actually ended up losing the game 2-1, and I think they deserved to lose the game, if I'm totally honest. Yeah, they absolutely deserved to lose the game, and from Man United's point of view, me being a Man United fan, we deserved what we deserved. So you can't, I always say there's defining moments there's a defining moment or period in every game of football, and if you come out on top of that, then ultimately you probably have the result in favour of yourself. And there was a period in the beginning of the second half where United could have scored 5 goals minimum, and the fact that Seville defended heroically, and a combination of some poor finishing from United, and some like I said, emergency defending from Seville, and some brilliant saves from the goalkeeper. That period there, if United had scored a couple of goals there, to me that would have been game over, and they were into the final. But Seville managed not to concede, and then that left Man United a bit more vulnerable defensively, and that turned out that way. So Seville went on into the final, played Inter Milan, and actually beat Inter Milan 3-2. So congrats to them as well, winning 3-2 in the final. So a couple of other things I want to talk about. We just want to talk about the FA Cup result, because we haven't spoken about that, and then also the Championship playoff final as well. So talk about FA Cup quickly as well. So that was a London derby, Chelsea versus Arsenal. Arsenal ended up winning the game 2-1. Chelsea didn't really turn up on the final, if I'm totally honest. Apart from the first 10 to 15 minutes, they played pretty well in that first 10-15 minutes. Chelsea. Apart from that, they were miles off it, if I'm totally honest. They weren't nowhere near their levels, and Arsenal absolutely deserved to win the game. So as a result of Arsenal winning that FA Cup final, they have now moved automatically into the Europa League group stages. So they hadn't qualified for Europa League prior to the FA Cup final because of their league position. But because they have won that, they now have automatically gone straight into the group stage. So that's European football for Arsenal for another season. And as a result of that has moved Spurs out of the European group stages. So they had finished 6th in the Premier League and were in the Europa League group stages. Now they've been moved down to the second round qualifying. So Spurs have got some work to do before they get to the group stages. Incidentally, the qualifying stages will just be single-legged affairs. So Spurs have got to get through the second round and then the third round, and then they get to the group stages. So that'll be interesting to see how Spurs and Mourinho sort of navigate their way through the beginning of the Premier League. Then you've got obviously Europa League, and then I think the Carabao Cup as well also starts around that period. So they've got fixture congestion early on in the season, but it'll be interesting to see how they navigate through that. So that leaves Liverpool, Manchester City, Man United and Chelsea in the Champions League. That leaves Leicester and Arsenal in the European group stages for the Europa League. and then that puts Spurs into the qualifying stages, and that's sort of the 7 teams that qualify for Europe at this stage, and all their sort of positions. Then moving on to the Championship playoff final, so the game was contested between Fulham and Brentford, so sort of a London derby, if you like. Brentford were looking to be to get promoted for the first time to the Premier League. Fulham were looking to be promoted back to the Premier League after being relegated the season before, and it turned out to be Fulham's day, really. They won the game in extra time, 2-1. Massive congratulations to Scott Parker and his team and his boys. On the day, I don't think Brentford really turned up. I mean, I think they were a bit nervous. Maybe they didn't really show their full potential on the day. I think Fulham's experience, having gone through the playoffs 2 years prior, I think the likes of Tom Kearney and one or two others as well would have helped them go through that process and feeling comfortable in that environment on that stage as well. So, congrats to Fulham. They join West Brom and Leeds in the Premier League. Moving on to the Premier League then, and the Premier League have announced that the 2021 season will start the weekend of the 12th of September. So this will only be for 16 out of the 20 clubs. Reason being, because Manchester United and Manchester City were the 2 teams out of the 4 that I mentioned prior got furthest in Europe, they kind of need a few extra days rest before they can start the 2021 season. So I'm pretty sure I mentioned in the last episode that they're looking about 30 days before they can play their next game from when they play their last game, which roughly would be the following weekend, which so Manchester City were meant to be hosting Aston Villa, so that game has been postponed, so Villa won't play a game either. And Burnley were hosting Manchester United, so they won't play a game either. So effectively 4 clubs aren't playing in the opening game of the season. They would all play the opening game of the season the following weekend commencing the 19th September. So we will just touch on some of the fixtures that have been sort of announced so far. So we'll just run through them all because there's only 8 games. The kick-off times haven't been decided as of yet. The days, some of them have been selected, some of them haven't. So it's a bit unclear at the moment. So as it stands on the Saturday, the games will be Crystal Palace versus Southampton, so Roy Hodgson versus Ralph Hasenhüttl of the 2 managers. Then you've got a London derby, you've got Fulham versus Arsenal, Scott Parker versus Mikel Arteta, so a battle of young managers, if you like. Then you've got the Champions League, sorry, it's not Champions League, so the champions, the reigning champions, Liverpool versus Leeds, against newly promoted Leeds. So Klopp versus Bielsa, that'll be a really fascinating game. I'm pretty sure that'll be on TV, that game. Not only because Liverpool are the reigning champions, but because of Leeds being outside the big time for 16 years, and Bielsa brings a massive sort of audience, if you like, as well, from what he does and what he's achieved in the game. So I'm pretty sure that'll be in the game. That'll be a ferocious start to the campaign for both teams, really. Then you've got, on paper, certainly possibly the 2 bigger teams, if you like, that are playing against each other. So you've got Spurs versus Everton. Both of these probably had disappointing seasons last season, albeit Spurs did well with Mourinho to turn around their league position from 16th for when he joined the club to 14th, I think it was, to 6th in the league. So they've done pretty well. And then Ancelotti, when he came in, he did really well initially, and then they kind of faded off. So both these managers and teams have got things to prove. I'm pretty sure that game will probably be on TV as well, guys. Then you got West Brom versus Leicester, which is a bit of a sort of Midlands derby. That's not really Midlands derby at all, really, is it? So you got Slaven Bilic versus Brendan Rodgers. That'd be an interesting game. Newly promoted team again. Then you've got West Ham versus Newcastle. You've got David Moyes. Their team did really, really well. West Ham did really, really well, sort of in the back end of last season, sort of gaining lots and lots of points towards the end of the season, and a lot of that was down to Antonio's goal scoring form. So it'll be interesting to see how they sort of start this season. I'm sure David Moyes will be, looking to continue that form and make sure they don't go off to a slow start going into this season against Steve Bruce's Newcastle, who, incidentally, still to this day, Newcastle fans aren't happy with his appointment and are not happy with what the job Steve Bruce has done. I mean, I don't know what else he can do. He's kept the club in the league, and under the conditions he's working under, I think he's done a brilliant job. So So those games there, those 6 games are all scheduled at the moment just on the Saturday. I'm sure some of them will be on the Saturday, some of them will be on the Sunday for various games on TV, etc. Then you've got 0 games on the Sunday. Then you've got a couple of games on the Monday. So the reason why these games have been scheduled for the Monday, 2 games on a Monday, is because you've got Chelsea and Wolves. Now these were the other 2 teams that played in Europe. So it's just to give those 2 teams, Chelsea and Wolves, a couple of extra days to sort of prepare for their game. So they obviously didn't last in Europe as long as Manchester City and Man United, but equally they didn't get a full rest either. So I think that's a happy medium there for both of them teams. So that, they'll be happy with them both playing on a Monday. And imagine possibly one at 6 o'clock and one at 8 o'clock kickoff. So yeah, they're sort of the opening round of the Premier League season, of the 2021 season. Some nice fixtures there. Fulham would take an absolute home game the season. Same with West Brom. Happy with that as well. Leeds, difficult game, but a game to sort of really look forward to go to Anfield to play against the champs, the defending champs. So yeah, some good games. We'll just quickly fast forward to the following weekend, just so Man United and Manchester City get a bit of a mention as well. And there's 1 or 2 interesting, some big heavyweight games as well, if you like, certainly on paper anyway. So moving forward to Saturday the 19th, and again, these fixtures haven't been, the kickoff times haven't been announced or exactly when they're going to be playing on that weekend. So I'll just run through the fixtures. You've got Arsenal versus West Ham, another London derby. Villa versus Sheffield United, that'll be an interesting game. Then you've got a heavyweight game. You've got Chelsea versus Liverpool. That'll be a very, very interesting game. Frank Lampard's first home game of the season. Liverpool going away to probably almost a brand new Chelsea team, if you like, with the amount of players they've signed so far and possibly could be signing, and we'll touch on that a bit more as we go along. And you've got Everton versus West Brom, Leeds versus Fulham, so 2 of the promoted clubs playing each other, second game of the season. Both teams will want to try and get off to a fast start there, put one over the other early on. Leicester versus Burnley. Then you've got Manchester United versus Crystal Palace, so a nice fixture, certainly on paper, for Manchester United. Having said that, the reversed this fixture last season, United lost 1-2, and it was early on in the season as well. So, certainly on paper it's an easy fixture, but it never works out that way, I would suggest. Newcastle versus West Brom. Southampton versus Spurs. So you've got a couple of we've got Højbjerg going back to his old club, and we'll touch on him a bit more. Second game of the season, and then you've got another absolute mouth-watering game. You've got Wolves versus Manchester City. So both those teams' Manchester City's first game, away to Wolves. That's a very, very difficult game for them to have as well. So there's just sort of some of the games that we've sort of touched on, guys, going into 2021 season. We'll obviously talk about maybe a few more games as the weeks sort of go on and we lead up to the first weekend of the Premier League fixtures and the Premier League games. So, okay, just moving swiftly on to transfers in and transfers out. So we'll talk about some of the big transfers in so far, maybe some of the teams that have maybe the winners of the window so far, and granted the window is still open for another 6 weeks, guys. So, as certainly for international trades to have taken place anyway. So far, I'll just run through some of these. So you've got Timo Werner and Ziyech, which I touched on in the last episode, both signed for Chelsea, both signed whilst the season was going on. So Ziyech was signed in February, so just after the January transfer window, the fee was agreed, and he joined in the summer. And Werner was agreed sort of about a month ago, 6 weeks ago. Both have been training with the team or individually at Cobham, so they'll both be fresh coming out of the Dutch league and the German league respectively. Just moving on to some others, so you've got Spurs have made a couple of transfers as well. So I touched on Højbjerg earlier on, so he was the Southampton captain before sort of Project Restart happened. He kind of declared he wanted to leave the club and join sort of a team that's playing sort of European football. So he was stripped of the armband, but still sort of kept in the sort of squad, if you like. Wasn't sort of completely just shoved out the way from Ralph Hasenhüttl. I think he respected what Højbjerg can offer and what he can do to the team, and his professionalism as well. So I think that could be a really smart and clever signing for Jose Mourinho and Spurs. Another signing that Spurs have made is Joe Hart. So he was a free agent. He was released from Burnley at the end of the season. So him coming in, I think it's another smart decision from Mourinho and Spurs as well. Just on both those together, sort of a pairing. If you look at it, what do they offer? Okay, Joe Hart's probably not going to play in the Premier League, unless Lloris picks up an injury. Then he's a very adequate replacement to come in. But he'll probably play the European games, I'd imagine. And also with Højbjerg, he's played. Okay, he's just come from Southampton, but he's played at the highest level. He's played with Bayern Munich. He's played with Pep Guardiola. He's played in the Champions League. So he's got a good reputation in sort of the game, if you like. And both those players bring a winner's mentality. So they've both won things. They've both played at the highest level, and I think that's what Spurs need. They brought in maybe a couple of characters, a couple of winners that can help sort of the mentality of the group. If you go through the Spurs team, I can't really think of many absolute out and out winners in that team. And off the top of my head, you've got Lloris, who, he's a captain of the club, but also he has won the World Cup with France. And after that, I'm doing one of these guys. I'm scratching my head. I can't think of anyone else who's an absolute winner. I mean, you could argue possibly Son, things he's done is sort of in the Asian games, but apart from that, no one else is they haven't got the mentality, the elite mindset they need to win things. So I think going away just from their football talent and looking beyond that, I think there's some two really adequate and clever signings, if you like, from Levy and Spurs and Mourinho. Then moving on to Arsenal, so they already signed a lad called Silva. Forgive my pronunciation, guys. I'm not sure if I pronounced that correctly. He's a centre back. They signed him last year, but they loaned him back out to the club they signed him. So he, by all accounts, has had a really strong season last year, and amongst the Arsenal community and fans, they think he was going to walk straight into the team, which is a big statement. He's a youngish player. I'm not sure if he will, but that could happen. And maybe that's what they need. They need someone who's a bit of a no-nonsense to come in and sort of help that defensive solidity in the team and continuity in the back line. They've also signed Willian on a free transfer as well. I think this is a really underrated signing. A lot of Arsenal fans that I've heard, and even in general, fans in general, don't think Willian's going to be a first teamer. They don't think he's going to be a player that's going to help them get to where they want to, which is probably the Champions League. But I disagree. I think although he doesn't necessarily get the high numbers, i.e. 20 goals a season, 20 assists a season, he contributes for the team and offers lots of different threats, both going forward and defensively. He'll still get you 10 goals and 10 assists in the season, provided he plays 40 to 50 games a season. And his history in terms of his injuries suggests he's got no problem doing that. He's proven it in the last 7 seasons at Chelsea. He's played 40 to 50 games in every season, so he will be a really good signing, I believe, for Arsenal. Just moving on to some others. You've got Lallana that joined Brighton on a free transfer, which is a clever signing. Another technical player that will join Graham Potter's Brighton's team. I think that'll be a good signing for them. Forgive my pronunciation. Liverpool have signed a left back called Tsimikas. I think that's correct, guys. So he will just be cover for Andy Robertson. Now, there was talk of Jamal Lewis from Norwich coming in, but Liverpool weren't willing to pay the 20 or close to £20 million that Norwich wanted. So they bought this young, I say young, he's a Greek. He'll be an understudy to Andy Robertson, like I touched on. Then moving on to Manchester City, so they've signed Bournemouth's Nathan Ake. I think it's a really clever signing. He joins to add more depth in the centre-half department, but also I think he could potentially play as a left-back, and also I wouldn't be surprised if Manchester City played a sort of more three at the back this season as well. That's something I'm sort of keeping an eye on as well, especially as they've been rumoured with signing Koulibaly from Napoli as well. So if they signed him, Laporte, they've obviously got Laporte already, and they've got Ake, then they've got potential and flexibility to play three at the back as well. But yeah, very good signing for them. They signed Ferran Torres, He's a young, tricky winger from, I believe, from Valencia. Now, there's been some controversy about the signing, the fee that Manchester City have paid. So, some people have said, why have they signed him for £20.5 million or euros or whatever it is, when his release clause is like €40 million? Well, because Valencia are in financial difficulty and he's in his last year of his contract, I think Valencia just wanted the cash. So to get €20.5 million for someone who's only 21 years old, hasn't got loads of experience at that level, it's decent sort of business, if you like. So I think he'll be more of a squad play, if you like. He's not going to come and take Sterling's position. He could play the other side, but then you've got Bernardo Silva could play there, and Mahrez, and I'm not sure that, granted I've not seen a lot of this Ferran Torres play, only a few clips on YouTube and online. It doesn't seem like he's going to sort of take Mahrez or Bernardo Silva or even fill Foden's position on that right hand side, but certainly a clever player, one to sort of cover, if you like, Leroy Sané leaving the club. Moving on to a few others, you've got Ramsdale, who's left Bournemouth again. He signed for Sheffield United. Sheffield United haven't signed Dean Henderson, so they've had to go and buy a goalkeeper. And Ramsdale was sold from Sheffield United to from Bournemouth. Start again. Ramsdale was sold from Sheffield United to Bournemouth 3 years ago for £1 million. So it's a no-brainer for him to go back and sort of go back into the club where he's sort of familiar, if you like. You've got Mo Salisu from Southampton, so they've signed a centre back from a team, I think it's Villarreal in the Spanish league. Southampton have also signed Kyle Walker-Peters as well, so part of the sort of the Højbjerg did as well. So Højbjerg was signed for X amount, Kyle Walker-Peters was signed for X amount as well, and then there was some money sort of, I think Spurs paid some money extra for Højbjerg to sort of make the fee sort of reasonable and fair for both parties. And then you've also got West Brom's Pereira as well. That's actually signed. So he was on loan at West Brom last season in the Championship, and now he's signed for West Brom on a permanent now. He was the assist king in the Championship. He offers a lot of threat, a lot of flair. I would not be surprised by the end of this season if there's other clubs interested in the Premier League to sign this guy. He is very, very tricky. He's direct. He'll create things. So I think this is a very, very good signing for West Brom. It's exactly what they needed. A player that, albeit the fans aren't going to be in the stadium, but a player that can get the fans off their seats. He's a very tricky and dynamic player. So there's some of the transfers in, guys, and there is many, many more as well, and we'll touch on more as the weeks go on. But they're sort of the notable ones to sort of mention at this stage. Okay, moving on to players out now. Again, there's been a lot more sort of players out, but I won't go through every one. I'll just sort of mention the big ones, if you like, the ones that sort of deserve to sort of be mentioned, of course, what they've done in the game, and maybe sort of the transfer fees they've gone for, etc. So the first one, and the most obvious one, is David Silva. So it was announced this time last season, or even before, over a year ago, that the 1920 season was going to be his last season in the Premier League. He was going to leave Manchester City. So he has left on not quite the perfect note. It would have been nice for David Silva and for Manchester City for them to go and win the Champions League, but it wasn't to be. Nevertheless, he's had a fantastic career, winning multiple Premier Leagues, League Cups, FA Cups, that kind of thing. So he's actually gone and joined Real Sociedad. Now, he was on the verge of signing for Lazio a few days before, but out of nowhere he just signed for Real Sociedad. So fair play to him. Probably wants to go back to Spain and feel comfortable with his family. He's got a relatively newborn there as well, so can understand that. Touched on Leroy Sané. So again, a year ago, Bayern Munich declared their interest in signing him. They weren't willing to pay sort of a high amount of what sort of Manchester City thought their valuation was, and also on top of that, in the Community Shield last season, he did pick up a serious knee injury, so that kind of ruled out his potential sale to Bayern Munich. But it's happened this time round. He's now signed for Bayern Munich. It's where he wants to be, back in Germany, playing games and playing for the biggest force in the Bundesliga. A couple of others as well. So you've got Jan Vertonghen. Now he's been sold. Hasn't been sold. He's left Spurs. He's joined Benfica on a 3-year deal, which is at his age, at the age of sort of 33, just on a 3-year deal at Benfica. Another sort of European heavyweight, if you like. That's a very, very good deal for him at his age. And another new experience for him and his family as well. Dejan Lovren of Liverpool. It's still difficult for him to sort of get back into the team because of Joe Gomez's form. Obviously Van Dijk's not going anywhere, he's playing every game. And Joel Matip's as well sort of seems to be sort of the one that's sort of competing with Joe Gomez to get that team. So he was way down the pecking order. So he's gone to Zenit St Petersburg. A couple of others to sort of mention as well. We've got Leighton Baines, who has retired from football altogether. He has hung up his boots after being at Everton for, I would say, a minimum of a decade. He's been there for a very, very long time. A very successful career, not only at Everton, but at international level, and prior to that even at Wigan as well. So yeah, he's hung up his boots, and I'm not sure exactly what he's doing, but no doubt, knowing him, he'll probably be going to probably some coach, or maybe initially maybe have some time off, but some coaching, because he seems like the type of person who understands the game of football, wants to pass on his knowledge within the game as well. The last one is Zabaleta. So he's left West Ham. There's been no announcement made of where he is going to be going, if he's going to be retiring, if he's going to be going into television, going to be doing some coaching. There's no news on that, but again, another one to sort of mention as well, being another one who's sort of been a Premier League great, if you like, a legend in the game. So yeah, watch your space with Zabaleta as well. And then guys, we'll just move finally to sort of any other news. There's a couple of things I want to mention on here in regards to sort of the League Cup and the FA Cup. So we'll start with the League Cup to start with. So the League Cup dates have been announced. The midweek of, well, the dates of 15th and the 16th of September will be round 2. So that's when all the Premier League clubs will come into play, apart from the teams that are playing in Europe. So effectively 13 teams will play in round 2. So after the first round of Premier League fixtures. And then the following midweek, which is the weekend the 22nd and 23rd of September, that's when round 3 will take place, and that's when the other 7 Premier League clubs will come into the competition and play their games as well. Also, just to mention as well, it's a smart decision, obviously, with what's happening with COVID and everything being congested for this season, the 2021 season, because of what's happening in the summer next year, i.e. the European Championships happening and the Olympics is happening, and there's probably multiple other events as well happening across the globe. So everything has to be sort of condensed down. So the smart decision of just reducing down, it's only one game, guys, but reducing down the semi-final just down to one leg seems like a smart decision. And you know, sometimes the games can catch up with people, so just reducing that one game to, you know, if that's a Manchester City, for example, you know, it's one less game that they've got to worry about, which is you know, a smart decision from the League Cup. Then moving on to the FA Cup. So the FA Cup dates have been announced as well. So the third round will take place on the weekend of the 4th of January. So it's round 3. That's when all the big boys come into it. Obviously, there's going to be games for tiers below that, i.e., you know, the National League, and even below that, where all the other teams sort of play, you know, in the round 1, round 2 sort of stages. So that's when the FA Cup will come into play. There'll also be no replays in the FA Cup, so it will be decided on that date. There'll be no replay. So whether it goes straight to penalties, I'm not sure. I think it's extra time and then penalties. So maximum they'll be playing is 120. They won't be playing at 90, and then possibly another 90 plus another 30, then plus penalties. It'll be done on that night, guys. So that saves another fixture, if you like, for potential you know, backlog of fixtures for certainly the big boys in the Premier League. And a couple of other things to sort of mention as well. So I touched on the Premier League starts on the weekend of the 12th of September. Just prior to that, so the dates between the 3rd and the 8th of September, there will be a round or 2 rounds of international games. So whether each nation has organised 1 game or 2 games or whatever it may be, there will be a game or 2 for a bunch of players who will be playing international games. So yeah, just sort of not ideal preparation for certainly the Premier League clubs. If you think about it, they've they've all just come back to pre-season now. Well, most of them have. Some of them haven't yet because they've obviously just finished the European games. But sort of going into the weekend of the 12th, they would like a sort of a nice run of period where they can prepare for the opening game. But the managers and the clubs won't have their players back until the 8th/9th of September. It only gives them 2 or 3 days to prepare for the opening game of the season, which is, like I said, it's not ideal, but it's one of them where, because of what's happened, there has to be something swallowed from all different parties where you're not going to be beneficial to you. It's beneficial for the game. If you flip it from the other side, from the international manager's point of view, they haven't had an international game for nearly a whole year. The last time they would have played would have been November of last year. So these games will be played in early September. So it's going to be 10 months since they've last played an international game. So, they've got to be, like I said, there's got to be something swallowed from the Premier League clubs and just say, do you know what, okay, we're not having an ideal scenario here leading up to our Premier League game, but also from the other side of it, if you're an international manager, you've got to see it from that point of view as well. So, again, not ideal, but we're not in an ideal world at the moment. It is what it is. You've got to adapt to it, and I'd imagine all Premier League clubs and managers will be praying their players don't get injured going into or coming out of that international round of games. A couple of things just to finish on, guys. So their pre-season games are now sort of starting to take place for a bunch of the Premier League clubs. They all sort of started and kicked off over the weekend. So just to mention a couple, Liverpool play Stuttgart over in Austria, won their game 3-0. Firmino, Naby Keita and Ryan Brewster scoring the goals. Spurs had a game over the weekend as well. They played Ipswich at home. Son scoring a couple of goals and Sessegnon scoring. And then the other game I noticed was Everton versus Blackpool. Everton were actually 3-0 down in this game and they drew 3-3. Calvert-Lewin scored and Sigurdsson scored 2 goals as well. So the pre-season games and the preparations are all kicking off now, guys. So just keep watching, find things online on social media. You'll see all the games, guys, happening there. Keep an eye on what teams are doing well, where the games are going to be played and all that kind of thing as well. And we'll touch on more of those next week, guys, because no doubt there'll be a bunch more fixtures take place throughout this week. And the last thing I just want to touch on before we sort of wrap things up, guys, is the fans. So, as of Project Restart, fans weren't allowed in the stadium. There has been a couple of sort of tester sample sporting events that have happened in the UK. So a couple of that have happened that I've noticed. There's been a cricket game that's happened where they've had, I think, about 500 spectators. And there's also been the World Championship Snooker, where the final's taken place and they've had a bunch of fans there as well. So they're almost like tester, sample, international sort of fixtures to see what it's like to have fans inside the stadium and see what repercussions it could potentially have or not have after sort of being in that sort of environment. So I haven't heard any negative news or any positive news on the back of those events, them pilot events if you like. But what the Premier League are looking to do, from what I've heard, is by October, some point in October, whether it be the beginning, end, or even in the middle, they're looking to bring in some fans into Premier League games. So that doesn't mean there's going to be a full capacity. From what I'm hearing, it is going to be probably just home fans allowed in each of the home stadiums. So no away fans in any of the away stadiums, which is kind of makes sense because it stops the sort of away travelling, if you like. For example, Newcastle going down to Southampton, it's a big trek. They don't want to take around 2,000 fans or anything like that. So there's going to be fans in the stadium potentially. It all depends on how and what happens with these pilot tester and sample sporting events. But it's likely to be, guys, it's not going to be full capacity. It'll probably be something like, I don't know, maybe anywhere between 1,000 and 5,000 fans, depending on how big each stadium is and how they can work it in terms of social distancing and making sure that it's a safe environment for the fans to sort of be in. So yeah, guys, like I said, it's disappointing the fans aren't going to be there, but it seems like we're on, touch wood, we're on the right path in terms of you know, the coronavirus not spreading as much, and you know, allowing fans sort of back into the stadium, and making it sort of a bit more normal for the players and for the managers to sort of enjoy. And even the fans, you know, that's, I say normal for them, for the players and the managers, it's also normal for the fans. You know, they like going on a Saturday afternoon, watching their team play. That's what they almost say you look forward to. You know, it's often said in the northeast where Newcastle, or, you know, when Sunderland in the Premier League, that what Newcastle and Sunderland fans do, they work 9 till 5 Monday to Friday to pay for their ticket to watch their team at the weekend. You know, and that's how much it's sort of in their veins. You know, and that's what it's like for most clubs, I'd imagine, and most fans. So hopefully soon the fans will be in the stadium, and there will be some positive news and back to some sort of normality as well, guys. Okay, guys, we'll wrap up the first preview show of the 2021 season. There will be another one next week, and another one after that, going into the first week of the 2021 season. Like I touched on earlier, guys, just takes a second to subscribe to the channel if you want more content, if you want to hear more information going into the next season, the ins and outs, and you know, the transfer gossip and the transfers made, and all that kind of thing. Just click the subscribe button. It takes 1 second. Leave a like, leave a comment, and yeah, guys, we'll see everyone next week.